Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my channel. I'm an affiliate painter for Red Grass Games and also the head mecha and sci-fi painter for Vallejo Colors. I write painting articles for Fine Scale Modular Magazine. I also write articles for Fantasy Figures International Magazine. Lastly, if you're into Gunpla, do use my discount code for usagundamstore.com. Links down below. Today we damage and paint this Prezza building and I'll talk you through it. So I had my old man build me like a surround base and then glued everything there and mounted the gunpla and the building. I removed the gunpla and then now we're using a cheap nipper and then damaging the building. As you can see, I nip it. I don't cut it with the nipper. I kind of like hold it with the nipper and twist the plastic. This I found is the most like you get to have unpredictable damage, which is good because if you're using really nice cutting tools and stuff, it will be too like bland or something. This will create random shapes and damages, which is great. Also, I'm using here an art knife. I'm just nipping around the edges because you won't have really nice edges if you have a like post-apocalyptic building or something like that, or this one, a ruined building. So we're just nipping all those edges and adding a bit more damage with a sharp art knife. Also keep all those extra pieces that you chipped off from the Prezza building, and then now we're going to glue those at the bottom, at the ground part area. I'm using wood glue as usual because it's stronger than normal PVA glue, normal school white glue, and this will dry like more waterproof and stronger. It also actually dries faster. Just dump all those pieces there and then after like letting it dry for around 2 hours, then you could do anything with it. Basically, after letting it dry, I added texture paint so that you'll have really tiny rubbles and stuff like that once we painted this building. So after painting the like extra pieces on the ground part, I found that it lacks, the building needs more damages. So I'm using my Hasegawa saw here, an old school tool for gunpla. Basically, I nipped or like took an area at the side of the building and then using my nipper, I'm twisting the plastic again. Now I have more like pieces to glue later. Also, it's the area where the Schwalbe Graze will be standing or leaning, so I had to damage this part. Now we add texture paints. Black lava is the obvious choice, but I love it so much, and you'll see why I'm not using it here. We're using medium gray pumice, which is, I think, could be rougher than black lava or as rough as black lava. The thing is, these pumice texture paints, they dry the longest, or they dry the slowest amongst all the texture paints. But the good thing is, you could really see their coverage, meaning you could see that it's properly covered some areas and it's not covering the plastics and stuff like that. So it's a good choice for pre-painting texture paint because we're painting over it anyways. There is also a white pumice. It's basically the same, it's just in lighter color. Now we're basically adding like around the edges so that it will look more organic because we damaged this with the nipper and the art knife. It looks too like very not planned, but it's too smooth. So we're adding texture paint all over because this will represent rubble, tiny rubbles and gravel from the damaged parts of the building. So this will dry around 2 to 3 hours. Officially, Vallejo will tell you to let this dry for 24 hours. But I live in a hot and humid country. I live in the Philippines, and this will dry around, roughly with the help of a hair dryer, around 2 to 3 hours. So after adding the texture paints, I realized that the building, or at least the big surfaces of the building is still too smooth, so I damaged it with my chisels. Then I primed the whole building. I primed it with Mecha Black Primer, my go-to primer as usual. This is the strongest primer from the Vallejo paints range and the Mecha range. So let this dry an hour and then added some more details with some copper. And then after painting this copper stuff, which will represent like the foundation of the concrete, as usual, usually people use mosquito net and stuff, but I feel it's too detailed, or the scale is too small, so I decided to use copper wires so that to represent the like these parts of the damaged areas of the building. Once the copper wires are glued into place, basically I use super glue. I then applied black lava. Now you'll see that I'll be using the black lava a bit more. I love it so much, I try not to use it as often. But if the model is primed already, primed with black primer, it's the perfect texture paint because it's also black. The great thing about adding black lava after the black primer, we will see that some areas of the building are still too smooth. So adding the black lava will add more texture, and it's very visible after the priming. The black lava texture paint will dry faster than the pumice. I don't understand why, but it does dry faster. Also, I always use a hair dryer to speed up the process, but it should be ready to paint in an hour or two. Now we airbrush with dark gray green from the Mecha color range. We're painting mostly on the top areas of the building. This will create a zenithal like modulation effect look, and then we're painting it in two thin coats as usual, and then building up more colors or more paint at the top. We thin Mecha paints 3 parts paint and 1 part thinning sauce as usual, and then let this dry after 2 thin coats for around like 5-10 minutes, and then we paint with gray green, a lighter greenish bluish gray color. We paint this mostly on the top areas, less areas than what we painted with the dark gray green. Basically, we're using the gray green as like a modulation or a post shading for the building. It's a lighter concrete color, but it's actually it's bluish rather than green, but it's okay because we're going to do a lot of weathering on this building later. Once we finish this airbrushing, now we're going to do a lot of weathering, dry brushing, and washes and inks and stuff. Now we dry brush with deck tan. Deck tan is like, it's the ultimate like concrete color in terms of like it's a warm gray color. So we're dry brushing it basically in vertical like motion so that it will create some streaking in a way. Never like, don't do dry brushing sideways, because for our purpose here with the building, it's going to be perfect in terms of the look, because it will look like streaking or fading if you apply it vertically. As you can see in the video, we're producing like a fading effect from the dry brushing. As I've said, do it like vertically so that it will look like streaking. It's applying it from the top or from the bottom, it doesn't really matter, but just do it vertically so that will create a really nice effect for the building, and it will look like it's fading or like concrete or like rubble dropping from the top. Once you're happy with the deck tan dry brushing, we now dry brush with ivory. Ivory is a yellowish white color. It's perfect for highlights of warm gray colors and stuff like that. So we're dry brushing with a smaller brush. I'm using my red grass dry brush here and applying mostly on the top areas. Do not worry of applying this color too much, even the deck tan, because if it becomes too light or you did over dry brush, if there's such a word, you could tone it down with washes later. Also here you could see I use tape to like separate the panels or the areas of the building walls. It's a neat trick because you don't have to be really genial or like really focused on doing the streaking with the ivory. You just put the same tape over and over again and dry brush downwards. I think I'm pretty happy with the dry brushing so far. It looks nice, and we will add more contrast and definition with all these details with inks and washes. Now we mix our own acrylic shade. Basically, it's game ink sepia, around 2 parts game ink sepia and 1 part black ink. And then you mix that with water around roughly 1:1 and then apply it all over the model. So I applied our acrylic ink all over the model with a big brush and a really wet brush. And then I applied this around 2 thin coats and let it dry with a hair dryer. You could apply more inks around the crevices and the rubble areas because this will need more definition. But other than that, this is just an initial step to our weathering process. Now we paint a rust texture, make a rust texture. No thinning, just a wet brush will do. We're painting it over the metal parts of the windows. Also, if you've noticed the windows are like crooked and stuff, I overheat it with my hair dryer so that it looks like it's bent like metal, and then painted 2 thin coats of rust texture. Now here we're using one of my fab weathering effects paint, the streaking grime, and using it for streaking. No thinning for the streaking grime. Basically, I just use a wet brush and then applied it basically applied it in 2-3 thin coats depending on how much or how opaque I want the streaking to look. Same with the streaking grime, we're using rain marks as for streaking. We're also using a couple of mecha weathering paints, which is the light rust and the dark rust. So we're using these paints for streaking and a bit of like definition on some details of the building. Now we're using dark gray from the model wash, the classic model wash. I thinned this around 1:1 with flow improver to like increase or retard the drying time. And then as you can see here, I liberally apply it at the bottom part of the panels of the building and then blend it with a really wet brush. This technique actually creates a really quick and easy modulation effect on our buildings or any model for that matter. So basically it's just blending the edges of the wash so that you create a smooth transition with the model gray wash. So that's it. Basically, we flip-flop from dry brushing, inks and washes, streaking, and as a bit of stippling and blending to finish off this building. But honestly, this is not yet finished because I can only do the finishing touches with pigments and other washes and stuff once I've added the Gunpla, the Gundam Barbatos and the Schwalbe Graze. So that's it. This is basically part 1 of this article, this project is an article for my Fantasy Figures International magazine next month. So do subscribe to their magazine and see you next time. That's it. We're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos! Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my channel.